Welcome to another episode of Conversations with the Experts. Usually when we're doing these conversations, we're speaking with people who have had a laryngectomy and who were able to use one of the more traditional methods of communication following laryngectomy, whether that's an artificial larynx or esophageal speech or tracheoesophageal prosthesis. But there are times when those three methods are not available for whatever reason to people going through the surgery. And in this conversation, I'm joined by two amazing people, Mark and Sonia. And in addition to having a total laryngectomy, they've also had a glossectomy. And they'll be sharing with everyone about their method of communication and why those three methods were not possible, at least at this time. They're speaking or communicating with something called augmentative communication. So I'm going to be quiet now and I'm going to let them sort of take over. Sonia, I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit about your surgery, how long it's been, that sort of thing.
Want to say, I have pre-recorded some of my responses just in order to be able to respond more quickly and not have lag time while I am typing. That is actually one of the struggles with using type to talk. In April of 2021, the sporadic jaw pain I was having got on my nerves enough to go see my orthodontist. He diagnosed and started treating me for TMJ. I tried acupuncture. I tried Botox injections. The pain persisted. I saw a new dentist who told me I had some sort of bone spurs in my jaw. What the? Some days I would just turn to my husband and say, I just can't talk anymore. My face hurts so much. By October, I noticed my tongue was crooked when I stuck it out. The orthodontist told me, well, Sonia, your face has never been symmetrical. Thanks a lot, dude. I went back in November and said, listen, my tongue is really weird. Look again. He looked, he poked, his face fell. He said, Sonia, I have a good friend who is a maxillofacial surgeon. I want you to go see him right now. Drive over there now. I think it might be a tumor. I blurted out, well, I need that like I need a hole in my head. At the beginning of December, 4 days before my ENT appointment, I was hanging out with the fam and had a strange sensation of liquid trickling down the back of my throat. We rushed to the ER where I did my best exorcist impersonation, cauterization, embolization, intubation. 8 days later, I emerged with an initial diagnosis, myoepithelial carcinoma or adenoid cystic carcinoma, aka big ass salivary gland tumor at the base of my tongue. A total glossectomy was recommended. My family rallied around me. They searched for the best experts we could find. There was a surgeon in Tucson, Arizona, where I live, who said he could do it, but had never done it before. Okay, maybe it's just me, but if a dude is going to take out my whole tongue, I didn't want it to be his first rodeo. I was extremely fortunate to be accepted by Dr. Ha and his team at UCSF, and to have a family who could help me do this both logistically and financially. It was not clear prior to surgery what would need to be removed to give me clean margins. My focus was on staying alive, so I told Dr. Ha, when in doubt, take it out. On January 25th, 2022, after 15 hours of surgery, I woke up without a tongue, epiglottis, tonsils, hyoid bone, larynx, half a thyroid gland, and 66 lymph nodes. Let me tell you, I was just bloody happy to be alive.
Wow. Wow, that's quite a story. I agree with you. You don't want somebody where this is their first surgery. I know they need to practice on someone, but not me, right? Mark, what was it like for you?
My story starts back in 2009 when I discovered a growth on the base of my tongue. Like anything else bad, it was found late on a Friday night. Short version, surgery removed the entire mass followed up with chemo and superhydrosage radiation. Eventually things returned to normal, but after a few years, they started to fall apart, first with difficulty swallowing, followed by several bouts and hospitalizations for aspirational pneumonia. These happened in different locations around the country, so no one put two and two together at the time. In 2018, I ended up in an emergency room, where I went into respiratory arrest, as we arrived from a blood clot blocking my throat. cancer, apparently caused by the excess radiation I had received in 2009, had returned. After a stabilizing and a few days there, I went to rehab to get better in order to have surgery. I knew going in that I would lose my voice and have a stoma, so I was prepared, I suppose, for it as much as anyone could be. I underwent a 14-hour surgery for a laryngectomy and total glossectomy.
Wow. Yeah, you know, and that story of being in different places, so the pieces just not coming together, that was probably a big part of all that. So, both of you speak with augmentative communication, some sort of program or app. I wonder if you'd talk a little bit about how you arrived at using this for communication, if you had any guidance from a speech pathologist, if you discovered it on your own, and what you're using. All right, Mark, you're up. Oh. Okay.
Before we get into the nuts and bolts of text-to-speech technology and how you can make it work for you, I want to share some of my background. I used to make my living as a professional talker. I am an attorney by training, was a trial attorney for 20 years, mostly criminal prosecution. A lot of talking. Then I switched to training others to be trial attorneys, so even more talking. My voice was everything. I was also an amateur thespian and singer, doing everything from Broadway shows to classical church music. So now you know where I am coming from.
That is a big change, a huge change. I bet you have some
His
great.
fear was that this would not work. It was not the use of technology that bothered me. I used and taught others how to use presentation technology. What concerned me was that people would not wait while I typed out what I wanted to say, that they would ignore me or somehow think I did not deserve their attention because I could not speak. I was wrong. What I have learned is that people think this is really very cool and interesting. They give me a chance, and instead of sitting in the corner playing free cell, I am in the middle of conversations. Oh sure, there are times when they get carried away, and I am not able to keep up, but there are ways to slow them down and get me back in the conversation.
Oh, wonderful. You know, I think that is a concern, that because it's a slower form of communication that you are going to be left behind. I think most people who use some sort of augmentative communication are concerned about that. So I'm so glad that's not your experience. I think some of it has to do with your personality too. What about you, Sonia?
Oh, without a tongue, there isn't much choice in terms of communication. After diagnosis, I immediately started investigating means of communication on my own. I only had about 5 weeks before surgery. Shockingly, communication is not something anyone in the medical team discussed with me. At first, I assumed I would have a sexy Australian accent. Then I stumbled around the World Wide Web and found out about voice banking. Voice banking takes recordings of your own voice and creates a synthesized version of it that can be used by a type-to-talk program. I had limited time, so I just started voice banking like crazy with multiple companies. I wanted the best chance of having the best version of my own voice. Also, some voices are only compatible with certain speaking programs. I recorded with Acapella, Sarah Kroc, VoiceKeeper, and Speak Unique. For me, Speak Unique created the best version of my voice. That being said, all of those voices are robotic, without intonation, and thus lack the ability to express yourself fully, and can be difficult for people to understand because of this. We rely on the cant of speech as well as the content. During this time, I randomly heard a piece on NPR about a company that was doing more sophisticated versions of AI voice synthesis for other purposes. You probably unfortunately associate this sort of technology with deep fakes, or perhaps Val Kilmer. I Googled the company, but couldn't find a way to contact them. So my daughter sleuthed around LinkedIn. She systematically tagged every person she could find associated with the company, Speech Morphing. One day she got a response which was basically like, "Who the hell are you? And how did you find me?" They set up a phone call, but after the call, we were like completely uncertain if Speech Morphing would pay any attention to me. Some random woman without a tongue. Well, they actually did. They're an amazing group of people doing innovative work. I have been so lucky to work with them as they develop communication software tailored specifically to the needs of people like us. They were able to take my past voice recordings and create this voice. The first time I heard it, I literally broke down sobbing. I never liked my own voice, but when it was gone, I realized how much a part of me it is. I realized it's an intrinsic part of my personality and humanity. What takes speech morphing technology really over the top is that they're incorporating the ability to intonate. The only thing is, they don't have an annoyed tone of voice quite yet, so it's difficult for my husband to understand me that well. Ha ha ha.
Whoa. Well, the digitized voice sounds just amazing. I'm glad you're just a go-getter. The little bit I know about you, you're a fighter and feisty, and you're gonna go after, what you need. And so I'm so glad they worked with you. Your voice sounds terrific. But that is, I think, one of the issues with augmentative communication and digitized voice in general is intonation, phrasing, that kind of thing, right? Oh. So if
Well,
you
and you have to record
go ahead.
before you lose your voice.
That's true. That's true. So it's not available after
And
the
so
fact.
if you don't know,
Yeah. Yeah. So through all this process, um, what have each of you discovered about yourselves that you didn't know before all of this?
Wanted Sean Connery's voice, but it wasn't available.
Oh, just like Sonia wanted a sexy Australian voice, right?
I tried a lot of different modes and methods of communication. When I first had the surgery, I had prepared note cards with various phrases, like flashcards, that I put on a ring and could flip through to find the one I needed. I also had a pad of paper and pen handy. In addition, I knew a couple of rudimentary bits of sign language, like yes and no, thank you, stop, and so forth. These were all very limiting, and I kept researching and looking for something more efficient. Also, one of my biggest concerns was how to get someone's attention in the event I had an emergency. That was perhaps my greatest fear. I settled on text-to-voice applications that I found digging around on the internet. I settled on a couple of freeware applications that worked for me, which are similar in their function and content. My criteria were that they must work on my portable devices, such as cell phone and tablet, as well as on my laptop computer. For my cell phone and tablet, I settled on Speech Assistant. For my laptop, I chose eTriloquist. What I have is not my own voice, but I was able to find voices and tweak the pitch and speed to get a close approximation, particularly with eTriloquist, to my own voice. From the standpoint of what phrases to bank or save for regular use, it is a constantly changing thing. I did sit down and try to come up with what I thought would be the phrases I would need. Personal information like my name, date of birth, age, address, email, all the things you get asked when registering for a doctor's appointment are certainly useful. So is an explanation of why you sound like a computer, but my list of phrases will be unique to my life, as anyone else's would be to theirs. For instance, I have a storage phrase for buying lottery tickets. There are phrases for asking where the bathroom is in both English and Spanish. Another for ordering a beer. I am particularly fond of Guinness, so that is in there. But because of how I swallow, I am unable to easily use the standard pint glass, and have to ask for a smaller glass to make it easier. I also have a whole section of phrases should I have to make an emergency call. Start simple and build from there. You will find what you use the most and what you might want to have ready. Since I use my tablet for most spontaneous communication, it has the most saved phrases on it.
That's a good point of storing phrases, right? For so that you can communicate quickly, especially in an emergency. So I like that idea of some phrases that are personal to you, like ordering a Guinness, right? So how do you order or how do you ask for a lottery ticket? Let's hear it. A winning lottery ticket. That's okay. I put you on the spot. I wanted to hear, I thought it might be something interesting. Well,
Can never find one need. I simply ask for a Powerball ticket.
oh, okay. Yeah. I hear the Powerball is
For
pretty
attendees,
high.
that's what I have a nice list of message banking. I will not demonstrate here.
I've actually heard some of the messages, or you've told me about the messages you've banked, and I don't know if that's for prime time. I don't, but I love that you have those saved, because that's you, right? Wonderful.
Donde
Asked about
está el
self-discovery.
baño?
There you go, in Spanish. I like that. You never know, right? Well, I know I jumped the gun on this question, but I'll ask it again. If you've discovered anything about yourself that you didn't realize before, obviously strength, right? Courage. Sonia, you're up. Okay.
A pessimist, but now I am an optimist. I am so happy to be alive. Also, my husband and I have owned our own business for over 20 years. I was brought up to believe that work created value in me as a person. During my first hospitalization, I was literally trying to write work emails while intubated. Cancer forced me to slow down. Now I want to pursue my life differently. I don't want stress to rule me. I want to spend time exploring my other interests. I'm still working on believing this, but work is not intrinsic to my having value.
Yeah, so priorities shift the way you define yourself, right?
For sure.
How about for you, Mark?
Everyone faces something like this in their own way. It is as if a part of you is dying, and you go through the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. The biggest thing I can say to someone is try not to stay locked in either the anger or the depression stages. They will do no good and will take a heavy toll on both you, and perhaps more so, on your caretakers. I count myself as being lucky in that I reached acceptance pretty quickly. That is not to say that I do not still have moments of anger or depression. I do. But I try to get myself back on track and remember that I can still communicate, that I am not alone in this situation, and that I can overcome this. I am not a fatalist who believes in the adage of that which does not kill us makes us stronger. I look at from the standpoint that I am not going to let this be more than a nuisance in my life and deal with it accordingly. If you should find yourself locked into the anger or depression stages, please seek help. Finally, you need someone who can advocate for you. Your ability to do so will have limits, particularly while undergoing tests and procedures, and you are not able to make use of your communication alternatives. Your advocate can.
That's great advice. And you're right, you do go through a grieving, don't you? The loss of voice, and voice is so tied up in our personality, how we perceive ourselves. And so to lose that, you do go through those stages of grief. And Mark, I think you had a good point that sometimes you'll get off track. That's normal though, isn't it? Everybody will have a bad day. Something will come up that reminds you, right, of that loss or what have you, but you can get back on track more quickly. Yeah. So what advice would you give to medical professionals? Oh, Sonia, I see. I think your banked messages are that list is going to come
There is plenty.
out. Mm,
But I will just say this.
First, allow patients to have their advocates with them 24/7. If this isn't your practice's policy, turn a blind eye and let it happen. It's vital to their well-being. Second, if your medical practice does not facilitate a multidisciplinary team approach, you facilitate it. Reach out to the other medical professionals treating your patients, who are humans, by the way, and coordinate. Third, get educated on voice banking and let your patients know about it as soon as possible. It takes time to do. Not one professional told me about voice banking. I saw
mm. Mark, what would your advice be?
Well, I know just enough medicine to be dangerous to myself, family, and close friends. That said, the best advice I would give to medical professionals is to take the time to listen and comprehend your patient. I am a firm believer that you comprehend and remember about 10% of what the doctor tells you, maybe less when you are wearing a hospital exam gown. At the same time, I don't think medical professionals have the time, and some the inclination, to fully understand their patient. I can't tell you how many times I have had to explain what having a laryngectomy means in terms of breathing,
Mhm.
communicating, and so forth. The number of times someone wants to put nasal cannula on me for oxygen. I have a tattoo on my neck just below my stoma that says O2 goes here. I wear a medical alert necklace and bracelet for the same reason, and still I am scared that no one will bother to look at any of them. It's not everyone, but it has happened enough times that it scares me.
Yeah, that's an issue, I think, for most patients, is the concern that there'll be an instance when they need medical attention and they'll walk into that medical facility and their provider will not understand about laryngectomy. There's so many stories about oxygen on the nose, nasal cannula, or what have you. And so I love your tattoo. That's a bold statement. Hard to miss. Hard to miss. But I know that, education, one medical professional at a time. I think we've got the opportunity whenever you come in contact with someone to educate, right? So advocates are important when you're unable to speak for yourself. Absolutely. I hear you typing, Mark, so I'm
My wife is a fierce advocate. I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end.
that's a good thing. So, talking about advice, Sonia, you mentioned that no one brought up voice banking or augmentative communication. Did did either of you see a speech pathologist prior to your surgery, or was it just the surgeon? No. Yeah. Just trying to get
Ask
you,
the surgeons.
yeah, trying to get you through the surgery. What about after?
Yes.
Hmm.
But by then it's too late.
Right. Of course, because the opportunity to voice bank is lost. So when it comes to this surgery where glossectomy is also involved, it really makes sense to have a discussion about this well in advance, if that's a possibility. And it seems like that conversation would come from the ENT, the surgeon, right? Because you don't see a speech pathologist before, typically, or in time.
I think it does for any laryngectomy as well.
Mhm, mhm. I would agree. Agree.
I had seen a couple of speech pathologists for issues prior, particularly swallowing.
Mm.
But even after, there was little they could do.
Right. So, do you have any funny stories using this method of communication? You may not, but anything interesting? Okay.
I have a warm sense of humor, so asking if I have any funny stories opens too many possibilities. But I will
Oh.
say one thing that is both funny and serves as a warning to those who make use of text to speech technology to communicate. There are times that my tablet in particular will just start reciting saved phrases all on its own. I swear it has Tourette's and just spouts off with no self-control. It can be rather funny when it happens at inopportune times, and I can't get to it fast enough to shut it up.
Oh my gosh. Just
Solutions on my own. Not a funny story, but I have to say that my dark and sarcastic sense of humor has helped me get through this. I can laugh at myself and the absurdity of all of this. It's been vital to my coping, along with amazing support from my family.
Mhm. A sense of humor does get you through, doesn't it? Yeah.
For me, it really does.
Mhm. So somebody going through this surgery, whether it's laryngectomy, and glossectomy, what would you want them to know before they go through this? As they go through this?
Try to find an advocate, a friend or family member who can see you through this. Don't be afraid to ask questions and press on the medical team. Seek out the absolute best medical team you can find. Do anything you can to get to them. And do voice banking and voice messaging. Even if you think you will be able to speak using ONL or TEP, it doesn't always work out. Have your
Hmm. You know, I think that's a good point, Sonia, is even if someone is able to use an artificial larynx device or one of the more traditional methods of voice restoration, there may be times when you need to say something and it's challenging. Um, you know, each method of voice restoration has its positives and negatives, and there may be times when you can't access that particular method. I mean, just running out of your having your battery be dead in your artificial larynx, right? Now, what are we going to do? So, having that option, I think, is really important. A good
Even right
back.
after surgery, I was able to use my phone app in the hospital.
Mm, that's good.
I have to say the same thing. You will always face challenges. I'm the eternal Boy Scout and trying to be prepared for those situations when things don't work the way you thought.
Hmm. Um, well, as we wrap up here, anything else that I've not asked you that you think needs to be said, that you want to share?
think I have discovered that I am stronger than I gave myself credit for. Not being able to speak and having to blend everything to a liquid consistency so that I could gravity swallow was a huge change in my life. But I have made that change and was surprised when I was accepted just as I am. Some people are even fascinated at how I talk or eat, that I still function.
Mm. Again, I'm glad the response has been so positive for you.
Well, I am pretty new to this, but I would say that people go through worse. So being thankful for what you have is important.
Mm. Yes, I agree. Well, I want to thank you both so much for your willingness to share the way that you communicate, so that others maybe will have hope when they're not able to utilize the more traditional methods, or when they're facing more than just a laryngectomy and the tongue is involved as well. I think this is an option um, that they need to know about, obviously. An option that the two of you really had to discover on your own. So we spread the word, right? One person at a time. And hopefully, if somebody is faced with the same type of surgery that both of you have had, they'll have a heads up, right? And they'll be able to take advantage of voice banking, or take the time to find that text to speech app that makes sense for them.
Thank you so much. And thank you for these organizations that are so vital for support for all of us.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to do this. I know that Sonia makes herself available, as do I, to anyone that has questions or issues, and we are happy to help them navigate this new life. Remember, normal is merely a setting on the dryer.
Can I quote you? I love that. I love that. And that's true. Normal is just a setting on the dryer. Perfect. Well, thank you both so much. And we'll wrap it up. And we'll see you next time on Conversations with the Experts.